Between 2011 and 2019, the University of Montana was the flagship in the United States that had the largest decline of traditional students, and it dropped 40% between that time. When I walked in, when Stephanie walked in, it was very clear that there was some low-hanging fruit work to be done. So it was a lot of hard work. We're like up to our eyeballs in enrollment marketing for, a long time, but just trying every year to just get a little bit better, get a little bit more sophisticated. And we've seen that pay off in our enrollment.
Hey, welcome to the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast, a show where we bring together Marcom leaders from both inside and outside higher ed to give you fresh perspectives on successful content creation and strategy in higher education. My name is John Azzoni. I'm the founder of Unveiled, a video production company working specifically with colleges and universities. Learn more about our work, including our subscription approach to storytelling at unveiled.tv. That's UNVEILD. And if you like this podcast, then you'll love the Higher Ed Storytellers Digest. It's my free weekly newsletter where we cover a lot of ground about content creation and strategy. Sign up at unveiled.tv/newsletter. All right, let's get on with the show. Well, hey folks, today we've got a special 2-for-1 deal. Jenny Petty and Stephanie Geyer from University of Montana. Stephanie is the AVP for Marketing and Brand Strategy, and Jenny, by the time this comes out, will have transitioned out of her role as Vice President for Marketing and Communications Experience and Engagement. And she announced this on LinkedIn. Well, it's recent at the time that we're recording, with a great post of these big things that their team has accomplished over the years, from reversing a decades-long enrollment decline to telling powerful stories and elevating University of Montana's voice in national conversations. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to unpack these highlights and learn from Jenny and Stephanie's leadership, as well as the challenges that they came across in the process of doing big things. So I'm going to read Jenny's post here real quick, just so you know what we're talking about. So here's her post. It says, just like Taylor Swift, I'm stepping into a new era. After almost 5 transformative years at the University of Montana, I will be transitioning out of my role as Vice President for Marketing, Communications, Experience, and Engagement at the beginning of December. Leading this incredible team has been one of the greatest privileges of my career. Together, we've reversed a decade-long enrollment decline with 5 straight years of growth, built and launched the Montana Making brand platform, reimagined how we approach and modernized enrollment marketing, elevated UM's voice in national conversations about higher ed, research, and the incredible work happening on our campus, told the courageous, creative, and collective stories of this community, revitalized old and created new traditions that have contributed to a campus culture of vibrancy and belonging, produced cross-sector licensing programs that celebrated Montana's Indigenous communities, paid homage to Grizzly history, and tied product back to story, expanding reach and revenue along the way, and established a modern digital ecosystem that better serves prospective students, current students, alumni, and partners. This work has stretched me, challenged me, and reminded me why I believe so deeply in the power of higher education to change lives, families, communities, and the world. And then she goes on to say that she'll be entering into a new role, but we'll stop there and get into the episode for now. And I'm excited to unpack these different accomplishments. Okay, so here's my conversation with Jenny Petty and Stephanie Geyer. All right. Well, Jenny and Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So I invited you both on the show here after seeing this post of Jenny's, and I really like episodes that are punctuated with like layers that, they have some depth and have several, subtopics. So anytime I see a good bulleted, LinkedIn post, my eyes are like, yep. All right. So I thought this would make for a great episode. Excited to unpack, these accomplishments that you guys have made together for our audience to get an inside look at, a university brand from a high level and tackling some pretty big goals. So great to have you here. I'd like to start off on a non-higher ed note. So I've been asking people lately, what's something that you've been nerding out about or that you're just like really into personally or professionally?
Yeah, I'm way, because of the season that we're in right now, I'm way into repurposing and secondhand stuff and putting stuff out through Poshmark and other channels just to not be such a giant consumer of new things, but to reimagine things. So I've been working on using some fabric that I dyed in an art class in 1995 or 6. It's called shibori, and it's the ancient Japanese art of that was the precursor to tie-dye. So it's all indigo dye on white fabric. And I was going through my extensive collection of craft supplies and sewing materials, and I found some. And so now everything that I am making for people for the holidays is including stuff that I dyed in a previous century.
That's awesome. I very much appreciate the, leaning away from consumerism. Like anytime I like go straighten up my house, I just have this attitude of like, there's just too much stuff. Like, it's just like kids' toys and like just random stuff. I'm like, I love just taking a trash bag and going through the house and just getting rid of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. But I think the next step is to like not just throw it all away, but to find people that could use it or swap it for something else or turn it into something else is what I'm trying to move at. I when my kids were little, I just sent everything to the Goodwill, and I don't know if that's always the very best way that we can go.
Yeah. Jenny, what about you?
So I'm a huge bookworm. Most people who know me well know that that's my love language. Bookstores, libraries, just I love reading. I always have. And my oldest child, my son Henry, is reading The Count of Monte Cristo in his freshman high school English class. And that's one I've never read before. So I'm reading it. And then my daughter, who's in 6th grade, is also going to start reading it. And I'm one of those people that I start to rabbit hole a little bit with a tiny bit of information. So I've gone down a very long rabbit hole about Alexander. I don't know how you say it in French. I took French and I can't even. Alexander Dumas, the author. And, just the history there is really fascinating of the way that he was kind of a pop novelist, but was writing about some really serious things that have now had legs for a really long time. And it always makes me think about creativity and creating just for the joy of creating rather than with a purpose in mind. And I think the reason why his books have lived on is because they were great back then and they're still really great. So yeah, stay tuned for my dissertation on this. I'm not sure. I have a month off, which is really dangerous, John. So.
Oh, that's what I do. Between Christmas and New Year, I take a couple weeks off and I just read a bunch of stuff, like just all the books and it's usually like work related stuff. It's usually like, I love reading marketing books and storytelling books and just things about how to run a business better and create better content. I mean, that's just the stuff that I love doing. And I love a good Barnes and Noble. Do you guys have a Barnes and Noble by you?
Yes. I mean, I'll do any bookstore though. I love them all. The funny thing is I had a copy of The Count of Monte Cristo that I had owned for a long time, and it's over 1,200 pages. And I was asking my son, I was like, his teacher sent out this very serious note about keeping them on the reading schedule. And he was like, Mom, we're reading the abridged version. It's like 450 pages. So I'm like, oh okay, well, I'll try to, I'll fill you in on all the parts that you didn't have in yours.
So just to say it, I count on Jenny to tell me what I should be reading next because she does the legwork and I'm grateful for it. And I actually have, it's not a first edition, but a really old copy of, I think it's 3 volumes of that book from my grandparents. But I'm of a certain age where I have the attention span of a gnat, and I would rather listen to books and do something else and multitask. So I'm looking up to see if Spotify has it for me yet.
Well, the funny thing is that movie, sorry, we're down another rabbit hole. That movie is one of my favorite movies, and it's so cheesy now that you watch it because I don't know when it was made, but it has Jim Caviezel in it, and like the special effects are horrible, but I just love the story so much. Anyway, tangent, John. We should probably talk about marketing and the University of Montana.
I love it. I love a good tangent. So how do you guys know each other? Explain, I know there's like a mentoring relationship and then you guys work together. So talk about that.
So I was at the RNL conference in, I don't know what year it was. It was 2016,
Where
maybe
do you
20. I
remember
had a.
where it
It was
was?
in It was in Denver.
It was in Denver. Yeah, definitely before 17, maybe even as early as 14 or 15, maybe.
Yes. So I hadn't been in higher ed that long, and I had come from the private sector, and in particular, a really large Fortune 500 gaming company. And I was really struggling with the transition from private to public, well, from private sector to public higher education. And I ended up meeting a guy named Matt Hertzberger at the conference. I went to one of his sessions, and afterwards I went up to him and was just like, I'm having such a hard time. I don't understand. Like, I come from this world of doing lead generation. Nobody understands lead generation. And he's like, you've got to talk to Stephanie Geyer. And so I ended up, because Stephanie lives in Colorado and I was in Laramie, Wyoming at the time, ended up driving down, bringing my whole herd of children. I have 3 kids. And we were doing school shopping and ended up meeting Stephanie for lunch, and just finally meeting someone in higher ed who got me and was like, you're asking the right questions. You're not crazy. And from there on out, we did have a mentoring relationship. And then we worked together professionally in Stephanie's role as a consultant with RNL, and just had a great, I mean, we hit it off right away, had a great relationship. And then, fast forward to 2021, and I got this job at Montana, and I had been in the role probably about 6 weeks, and I was so overwhelmed with what was in front of me. To give you kind of a picture of, Montana's got so many strengths and such great vibes, and it's just a really special place, but the Marcom department had really been neglected for a long time. And so, and it had also been, a victim to budget cuts and some of that stuff that happens on our campuses. And so I walked in and it was like, okay, we have an immediate enrollment need that has to be fixed. We have to build this team. The digital stuff is just a disaster. And there was just this day where I was staring it down and ended up calling Stephanie and saying, like, what are you doing right now?
You want to just like fix enrollment real quick, or
Stephanie, tell him what happened?
Then what happened? So a little backstory. As the pandemic was winding up in 2020, I was one of the many folks that was exited from RNL, and that ended up being a really, really great opportunity for me at a time when it was awesome to be able to just work from home. And so I went from there to an interim CMO gig with Modern Campus. And Jenny called me the day after I had wrapped that project up, which allowed me the opportunity to help rebrand Modern Campus as we know it now from this really clunky Omni Update plus Destiny Solutions thing that the PE company had named it. And so I was sitting in my little rental office because still pandemic and still 3 kids and my husband at home. And that necessitated a rental office, and got Jenny's call just as I was sitting there on April 1st, and it was April Fool's Day. So I was like, is this real? And thinking, what's next? And so when I left RNL, I had thought, well, I'm going to start my own shingle and maybe a podcast. Oh, that's original, right? And then I got swept up into the Modern Campus gig, and that was terrific fun. Loved it. And so I was back to, oh, okay, maybe I should, get the LLC going again. And how do I make a podcast? And what do I have to say? And the phone rang. And it was so intriguing to think about going to work on a single campus again after 23 and a half years with RNL that started after 6-year stint at Wilkes University, small private in northeastern Pennsylvania. So in the intermediate time, I'd worked on more than 600 campuses around the world and thought, oh, one campus. How hard can that be?
Famous last words.
So silly. So silly.
And I was going to say, at the time she said to me, John, I'll give you 6 months. And I was like, I will take whatever I can get. Just come help me. And here we are 5 years later.
Yeah. Closing in on 5. And I am so grateful that Jenny thought to call me I'm so grateful that I had the ability to say yes. And the presence of mind, I think like 5 minutes after I hit campus, to know that I had found a really good gig. And it's just been and continues to be delightful, challenging, mystifying in moments, productive, successful. Yeah, all the things. I'm really happy.
So beyond the two of you, what's the greater team like? Like what kind of resources were you working with before we get into unpacking, the accomplishments that you guys made?
So I walked into a team that had, I think, about 11 or 12 people on it, and it was split at the time between like marketing and communications. But I would say marketing was this very, very sliver kind of solely focused on promotion in kind of maybe some of the simplest ways. And so there was just a lot of work there to build that out into a modern shop. At the same time, our counterpart on comms, Dave Kuntz, who's the senior director of strategic communications, was morphing the comms shop. He got there about 6 months before I did, from a traditional university relations function of just sending out press releases and doing that into a storytelling unit. And so that was a really nice time to translate. But we didn't have a digital team. We had no formal social media management. Enrollment marketing was being done kind of all over the place. We had a trademark and licensing function that was keeping the lights on and doing a good job, but needed to be plugged into the greater strategy. I mean, it was really a kind of a complete rebuild into a modern team structure.
Here's one hill I will die on. Making one-off videos whenever your team or some other department decides they need one is the most expensive and wasteful way to do video marketing for your college. What you need instead is a system that provides you a steady stream of video content all year long, and that is what our video storytelling subscriptions are all about. Get a year's worth of videos that are primed for distribution across awareness, consideration, and yield for one price. Take the next step at unveiled.tv and book a call with me. I'd love to hear what you're working on. All right, let's get back to the show. So let's just go point by point. So you reverse a decade-long enrollment decline with 5 straight years of growth. So tell me about that decline. Let's zero in on enrollment. And what did that take to turn that around?
So between 2011 and 2019, the University of Montana was the flagship in the United States that had the largest decline of traditional students. And it dropped 40% between that time, which is pretty startling. And when I walked in, when Stephanie walked in, it was very clear that there was some low-hanging fruit work to be done. I mean, it's things as simple as cleaning up comms flows, cleaning up current student communication in a way that made it warm and welcoming rather than, you owe us money, why aren't you paying your bill? It was things like looking at our digital footprint and saying, wow, we've got to rebuild our entire analytics engine that Stephanie took on, because even that wasn't up to standard and was broken. And so Stephanie and I, one of the first things we did was focus on what we ended up calling the digital ecosystem of, okay, we're going to go web first with this. We're going to really use these properties. And we found out that we had been grandfathered in and that the University of Montana actually owned 2 .edu domains. And when Stephanie and I found that out at a meeting, it was like there was a lightning bolt between us. And we were like, okay, we're going to take one of those and we're going to build an admissions only site while we get the regular .edu up to snuff. And so that was one of our first big initiatives. But I would say, it was an all hands on deck thing. Our whole Marcom team, we're up to 37, 38 people now, has some sort of role in enrollment. It's not just the enrollment marketing team. So it was bringing everyone in, like content creators. How are we going to repurpose this content to use in enrollment comms? It's our creative team of like, okay, you're cutting a video. How can you cut it to also have the admissions team use it? It's building a really deep partnership with our comrades over in enrollment. And I say partnership, those relationships can be so tricky, but we are so ridiculously lucky to work with a student success team that includes, current students in a retention focus and also enrollment of prospective students. So it was a lot of hard work. Like it 5 years of success I love when people present at conferences and you feel like, oh yeah, they just did it and it was so easy. Oh, it was really hard. It was really hard. Like
Yeah.
we're like up to our eyeballs in enrollment marketing for, a long time, but just trying every year to just get a little bit better, get a little bit more sophisticated. And we've seen that pay off in our enrollment.
Yeah, I'll just pile on and say that I think one of the things that made it possible was that the core team that we had, by and large, looked at what Jenny was laying down and what I was suggesting we might try. And they said, yeah, let's try that. Let's do something new, something different. And they were really open to and willing to learn. And now I have the experience of having writers on our team asking me about the conversion percentages on a certain population in our undergrad enrollment funnel. And I could weep with joy because they didn't always know to ask that question or to care about or understand how to work differently based on the results or the answer.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing work. And I imagine coming into that and just stuff's probably all over the place, comms flows and language, this and that. And, I think that sounds like a lot of work. So kudos to you for cleaning it up and finding an avenue to what was did you have to rebuild the admissions site from scratch, or you built it from scratch?
We did. We used the CMS from Modern Campus. You'll remember I mentioned that company previously. I suggested strongly and then stepped away from the process that the institution consider that CMS because of the advanced personalization functionality that they were offering and the roadmap that I knew from my time on the C-suite there. So we used Modern Campus and still have it in place to help us use primarily geolocation to articulate different positioning themes and content strategy. If you're in Montana, chances are you know a little something about the University of Montana. And if you're in Missoula County or any of the 5 or 6 surrounding counties, you may have feelings about what it's like to go to a big school in your backyard. And those feelings aren't always positive, right? 16-year-olds want to bust out. They want to do something different. They want to get out of Dodge. And so the website, the admissions microsite, allowed us to speak with them differentially and deferentially also to say, hey, you really should come here. It's a terrific deal financially, but you probably don't know all the ways that a University of Montana education can get you out of Montana if that's what your heart desires. And then, things like Yellowstone and COVID put an emphasis on Montana in ways that maybe weren't exactly accurate or useful for our positioning and goals. And so having the chance to say, oh, hey, you're not from here. Let us tell you what it's really like. And, I hope you got a pair of waders and a life jacket and maybe some ski pants because you're going to need it.
You didn't think Kevin Costner was the best mascot for you guys?
We definitely don't rope grizzlies. We can tell you that for sure. Or fly fish from horseback. So.
Yeah. And taking someone to the train station is just a really ridiculously long drive. So no, that's not what we do.
Okay. Well, good to know. Okay. So you built and launched Montana Making brand platform. So tell me about that. What was it? What were the problems that this new brand platform was attempting to solve?
So I really think of your brand platform as the foundation that everything else has to be built off of. And what was clear at Montana when I got there was that the brand itself had been neglected. So we hadn't really updated the way, nobody was really clear on, okay, when we're talking about the university, what do we say? Like everybody would just kind of default to like, well, we're in Montana. It's beautiful. It's like, yes, and every other flagship in the West is absolutely gorgeous. Like that's not a differentiator. Yes, Montana is a beautifully special place, but
it is. I've been there once fly fishing. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, it's stupid pretty. When I first moved here, I'd be like, there's a mountain on campus. Like it would just blow me away every single time I walk past it. But that's not necessarily something you can hang your hat on for an entire enrollment marketing strategy. And so I looked at, the work that had been done in the past. And I think, the other part of branding is like the brand doesn't belong just to the marketing team. The brand belongs to everyone at the university. And it had never been built intentionally around, feedback from campus. There was kind of taglines that had been thrown out, campaigns that had been put together, but there wasn't that coalition building around the brand. And so when we did the Montana Made, Montana Making work with Simpson Scarborough, we were really focused on doing it quickly because we were under a lot of time, pressure with enrollment. I went to the president and said, I need to do this. I need to do this project and I need money and I need time. And he said, well, how much time? And I said, a year to 18 months. And he said, can you do it in 5 months? And we did it in 9. We did it in 9 months.
All right.
Still the fastest branding campaign I've ever worked on, but I think it actually helped us. There was an urgency that helped campus move really quickly. We made decisions. We still did a lot of great research, but it was finally work that really made campus feel seen in it. And I think, Terry Flannery writes in How to Market a University about the brand being a bridge and a mirror. And I think that's exactly what we tried to do with our branding, was to make it both aspirational, but then also to really pull on the strings and the threads that make Montana so unique. And we did that. And we also pushed the limits. So we used really language that was much more of talking to a student than talking at a student. In the beginning, we had a complementary color palette that blew some people's skirts up. We did really go a little bit. We took some risks with it and it paid off and it's been really fun. And it's really was cool to see. We launched it in April of 2022 and you never know how those things are going to go when you launch it to a community. And we did a big brand camp with a bunch of people across campus. And what blew me away was the immediate demand for it. I mean, I thought we would have a little time of having to continue to roadshow and no, people were so excited. The next day they were trying to order swag, asking for the color palette. It was just, they were hungry for it and excited about it. And so I'll say my favorite part of the campaign is that the brand personality really leans into the characteristics of the grizzly bear. So it's things like playful and formidable. Stephanie, help me out.
Wise
That's right.
And still curious. I love that juxtaposition. I'm remembering too, when we launched the brand, the room was packed and there was so much excitement and so much energy. And it was all like, yes, let's go. And the power of that experience came back to me just about 6 months ago. I got to meet somebody from our legal team. And she said, oh, I know you, but you don't know me. I'm like, well, how do you know me if we haven't met before? She said, well, I remember you on stage, presenting the initial website that we put up for the campaign. And, she recited a few things that I said. And I was like, wow, this was years ago. And it was just the kind of fire and the kind of magic that campus needed to feel comfortable and confident that we were going to do some things really differently and that it would be okay. And then everybody, as Jenny said, was like, well, how do I do it? And that has provided a really, really essential piece of staff engagement that I'm so proud of that we continue today, which is our team. Even though Jenny's talked about a really big growth from 11 or 12 up to 37, we also have taken on a couple of different sectors and lots of other projects, but we still don't have enough bodies to redevelop a website for an entire college all on our own. We need assistance. And so we developed a coaching program. And I guess it's because, I'm a carpenter who knows how to hammer with a nail. So I turned a lot of my team into coaches or consultants. And so while we could go and say, hey, here are some brand guidelines, we couldn't execute for them, but we could coach them and we could teach them some basics of like information architecture in website development and message scaffolding and timing and understanding about market segments and why they matter and why you need to not make a one size fits all message when you can do segmentation, or how to make a social media account stay alive, even if you're just one person and can only post a few times a week or less. So that has been, I think, an ongoing bit of joy around the investment that the university made in that brand.
That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot to communicate to so many people and, you know, so many departments. And I mean, even just, you know, cherry picking what you said about how do you keep social media active with, you know, one or a few people. I mean, that's something that, I mean, that's a whole pillar of what we talk about on this podcast. I mean, it could be its own podcast, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that alone is hard for people to wrap their minds around, you know, how to repurpose and how to build systems that, you know, build consistency. What was the hardest part of all that? Just the whole process of maybe like boiling University of Montana down to a set of language, or maybe disagreements about what that language should be, or, you know, what in that whole branding process, what was hard about that?
I actually think the hardest part was overcoming some of the institutional trauma that the institution has. I mean, every big institution, every small institution like has issues. I think Montana just got hammered with a bunch kind of back to back, and it really affected morale. It really, people had fatigue when it came to consultants coming in. And so that was one of the biggest things, was overcoming this idea that, yeah, we're going to work with an agency, but it's not going to be the way that you've done it before. And I'm going to show you how the right way to do this is. And I think using it as a moment of institutional transformation was something that now I look back, I don't know if we were doing it intentionally, but it was something that happened through this process. And, you know, there was a moment at Brand Camp when we kicked off Brand Camp where I asked everyone, we had flower pots on every table that had dirt in it, and we bought seed paper. And we asked everyone in the room to write down one thing they had to let go of to move forward. And then they planted that in the planter. And then in the spring, we had flowers blooming from those pots. But there was this moment of like, if we're going to do this, we can't half-ass it. And people need to be invested, and they need to have hope again. And so I think that was the emotional labor behind the scenes that nobody really ever talks about with brand projects. But just overcoming people's concerns and fears. I mean, once they saw the creative, which was pretty wild, the first time they saw it, they panicked, because I did the same thing. I thought, this is never going to fly. But then you start to see it and you're like, oh, this is us. Like this, there's something here that feels really special. And so it was just walking that road of, you know, people's fears and anxieties and past issues that they might have had through this stuff, and still making it happen anyway.
That's amazing. That's a lot to shoulder, especially when you have the fatigue of things that have been done before and the trauma, as you said, which I mean, my wife is a trauma therapist, so I very much see that as, yeah, that's trauma, you know, when, when something is going to trigger you and just trigger these negative emotions. So I wanted to ask, the next thing in your post was reimagined how we approach and modernized enrollment marketing. So what did that end up looking like? Was that the microsite that we talked about, or is that something additional or different?
I think it's more of a philosophy, and I'll let Stephanie really talk more about this. But I mean, we've had a grip it and rip it kind of, we're not just catching up, like we're going to leapfrog. And so we've done some really cool stuff. Steph, you want to share some of the things that we've tried?
Yeah, there are a lot, and there are more coming, and some in process that'll be around out in the world soon. I think that one of the management ethos that we share is be really fearless about trying your very best hunch, and find partners who have the same vision and are willing to go hard and try something that might not work. And not everything we've tried has, been as successful as we'd hoped, but from each win, and especially from each failure, we've been able to learn and grow. I think the foundational components coming into view around analytics and just making sure that everyone on the marketing team understood the fundamentals of recruitment marketing and why it was important that we cared about in-state versus out-of-state, Western undergraduate exchange versus other out-of-state, why we have to have different messages from the same family to talk about those different marketplaces as we're trying to bring people in. And then I think another ethos that helped us is managing vendors really intentionally. And that's something that in my consulting years, I saw a lot of opportunity and a lot of bad examples where somebody would purchase something. Sometimes it would be a president or cabinet member would purchase something and then hand it to the mid-level team and say, hey, here's the thing I bought you. Go figure it out. And the alignment between what they purchased and what the institution needed is sometimes a little way off or a little off. On the other hand, having the team work with us to get excited about new vendors trying new things that really wanted to experiment with us and getting their buy-in as we were going through purchasing and getting things going from the get-go and having really intense, honest, meaningful relationships with the vendor through planning and development has gotten us so much further than I've seen many of my former clients go, where, they were kind of half in, half out because they didn't know that they really wanted this, or they really wanted that budget to go to another staff member, not a high-paying consultant in fancy shoes showing up on their campus once a month. So using that experience on the vendor side, I've really been happy to see my team make my vendor partners work really hard to find new ways to keep us happy. And it continues on a daily basis. Just had a meeting with another one, and they were eager to say, hey, we thought of you when we spun this up. Would you like to try it? Would you like to try it for free? Oh, yeah, I sure would. And we will.
I think a couple of the things, we've thought about the digital ecosystem as more than just website, right? So we've reimagined our social media strategy, where our social media manager, Emma Dorman, who's just absolutely amazing, has really given our social accounts a personality that matches the brand. But it's not just your standard higher ed account where it's pretty picture of campus with a nice caption. Like, she really has thought intentionally about it. I think also we've had some really great early success with, some AI tools. We're big fans of Collegevine and Helda. They have just been amazing partners to us. And so that was another area of just jumping in and trying some new tools, being early adopters too. I mean, we were probably one of the first universities in the country to have an AI recruiter, and just continuing to try. As I think it's an arms race right now in enrollment marketing to see what the next generation of tools and what's going to work really well. And we've been lucky to experiment and try that. I also want to say we were really lucky to also be able to experiment in adding a position on our team with the title of Brand Experience Manager. And that woman is Karen Schlater, and she is a powerhouse of all sorts of things. And I would really describe her as a catalyst. But that piece is one of those harder to measure. It's very much qualitative kind of data that we have around it. But Karen's whole role is to help students, either whether they're prospective or current, to find a place, a belonging and community on our campus. And she has done that phenomenally by being a connector across campus. And we've built programming that has become traditions. We've revived past traditions. She's just really intentional about co-creating with students. And that has been a huge part of our enrollment marketing strategy.
I love that part. And I love having Karen as part of my team, because it takes me back to the fundamentals that I learned through my work in Noel Levitz in a previous century, where retention is marketing. Retention is a part of recruitment. And having her so closely connected to our campus community gives me a really great kind of qualitative market research opportunity to say, hey, how's this going to smell? We're thinking about doing this thing. What do you think about this thing? Would you show it to your students, the zoo crew, the kids that are students that are constantly coming through her office? I'll sometimes ambush them and say, do you like this? What do you think about this? And it's just delightful, on the fly, real honest feedback.
I love that. And I'm going to start saying, how's this going to smell? From now on.
A sniff test. And my team will tell you I'm sniff testing constantly. Hey, does this smell like good cheese or not so good?
Yeah. Well, on that note, Jenny, you mentioned old traditions and new traditions. So let's just jump down to that point. Revitalizing old and creating new traditions that have contributed to a campus culture of vibrancy and belonging. So why was that? Well, I imagine on some level it was important to accomplish because, as you said, Stephanie, retention is marketing. But tell me how that played out. What new traditions came out of that?
Yeah. So when I arrived on campus, there's market research that had just been completed that showed one of the reasons why prospective students weren't choosing the University of Montana was because they had a perception that the campus lacked vibrancy. And so there was a lot of work kind of being done in pods to try to fix that and address it. And I was noticing early on that the president was talking to everybody about traditions, but nobody was really owning it. And I thought, well, I'm going to shoot my shot. I love brand experience. I've always thought about the work we do in a system like that. And so I said, hey, I want to add this position, and this person's going to be the connector of traditions. And she did do that. And, one of the oldest traditions on our campus is this thing called the Forester's Ball, which our College of Forestry and Conservation students put on. And they actually take an old building on campus, it was an old gymnasium. And every February, they change it into an old logging town. I always say mining because I'm from a mining family. No, old logging town. And they literally build like an Old West town inside, all from natural materials. They do it every single year. It is crazy. You walk in, there's a band, there's dancing, there's like a museum that you can walk through and see all the past balls. There, you can get your hair cut, you can get married and divorced, you can put somebody in jail. Like it's a wild thing that it's so Montana, but also so unexpected. And it almost died. They had to cancel it in 2020. Weren't sure if they would be able to bring it back. It hadn't been canceled since the flu pandemic in I don't know, a long time ago. Yeah. And so all of that history was at risk. And so Karen, our brand experience manager, really worked with the students to make sure that it could continue and sustain, and we got it going again. And it's just been so amazing to watch. Like they sell the tickets out now, 5 years later, they are back at it. And what we've noticed at the brand experience work is often we can just be the incubator. We can get something going again. We can help infuse ideas and resources into it, and then we hand it off. And so that's what we've done with that one. In terms of new traditions, something that we launched 5 years ago was this thing called the Freshman Float. So we, every year at the end of orientation, our entire freshman class, however many of them would like to, it's voluntary, grab a tube, they get on a bus on campus, and they go up to the Clark Fork, and we drop them in. We have the Clark Fork borders one side of our campus, and we drop them in, and they float the river together. And that has become something that feels like it's existed forever, but it's actually only about 5 years old. And it ties so well into our brand because one of our brand pillars is around the idea of stewardship. And so not only are we putting them on the bus and saying have a fun time, we also have river guides on the bus who explain how to be good stewards of the outdoors, how to be good recreators on the river. And it's funny, the river's always pretty low by the end of August, but these students come off and they're like, oh, I almost died. I went through these rapids. And, so it's also this real bonding experience. And that's really been fun to see that grow. And again, incubate. We did that for a couple of years and we handed it off to student success, and it's continuing and growing. And that's been really fun.
I love to talk about that in, larger settings where we talk about how hard it is to recruit our classes with shrinking population and, being in a very small state in terms of population, but huge in terms of geography, and saying, yeah, we did all right. We beat our numbers, and then we put them all in the river. And it went okay.
It's very safe. I should mention for the president of the university always likes people to know that there are personal flotation vests available if people so choose.
Yes.
Good. I imagine that makes for great stories, which reminds me, you had mentioned storytelling and this being a storytelling podcast. What were some of these stories that you told? You mentioned telling courageous, creative, and collective stories of this community. So what did that look like?
I feel like we have a storytelling machine. I mean, name a topic. We we are writing amazing profiles on current students, on young grads about the outcomes that are happening. We are writing amazing research stories. We had a class that was about calling bullshit from our journalism school. We wrote an amazing story about that. I mean, Steph, I'm sure you have other ideas. We've just got so much content.
Yeah, and it doesn't just come from like what's latest and new, but just looking back and recognizing some accomplishments that are still valid today, like a grad student who invented bear spray, which is, if you visit Montana or live in Montana, or I'm a part-time resident, I guess, there, I do indeed own some bear spray, and it's in the closet of my office and is often borrowed by my full-time campus team. You just have to have this. And so bear spray began at the University of Montana with one of ours. Like, that's a really connected piece of our fabric and lifestyle.
Yeah.
I mean, if you asked me like standout stories over the last couple of years, of course, like Lily Gladstone being nominated for an Oscar, she's also one of our alumna, was just an incredible moment. And she's been so good to our campus. And so that was just the photos, that storytelling visuals that came out of her visiting Montana, and just incredible. I would say we also have a really strong Indigenous and Native American population, and all of that storytelling has just, for me, I've learned so much through this role and through being exposed to that. And, we do a big line every year with our N7, which is a Nike program that celebrates Indigenous basketball. And we've really turned that into an opportunity to showcase the different tribes in Montana. To every year we have a Native artist that creates a piece of artwork that we then incorporate into our retail experience. And the storytelling around that has just been so meaningful and so impactful. And that's been really awesome.
I love that. And you mentioned in your post, you did a cross-sector licensing program celebrating Montana's Indigenous communities. Mm-hmm. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so that's the N7 program that I was just mentioning. It started off so if you do the N7 program through Nike, essentially they do 2 games a year. Your basketball team does 2 games a year where they wear turquoise jerseys, and it's, voiceovers and stuff like that. But with our Indigenous population on our campus, and understanding in Montana what an important piece of our history that is, we were like, we can go bigger than that. We should celebrate this, and we should really blow this out. And so the first year we had a young man who was alumni design a new design for us that we then used in retail. And it has been, now we're in the 4th year of it. That line consistently is our number 1 selling merchandise in retail. It's just, I think every year when it hits the shelves right around Thanksgiving, it's fascinating to see the Indigenous community come and start shopping. And for me, there was this moment of realization of 2 things. Like, one, we lump all these tribes together and we don't pay tribute to the amazing, intricate differences that there are between culturally, socially, between the tribes. And so it was a moment of reflection of like, we can do better. We can show this history, and we can do better representation of our tribes. And the second thing was just how important representation is for belonging. Like, this was the first time our Native counterparts on campus went into the bookstore and had merchandise that was made for them. And that was really powerful to watch and think, often as marketers, I don't think we think our work hits that deep, but it certainly can. And it did in this instance. And so that's been just an incredible, incredible program that has been really meaningful to work on. And we blew that up, right? It wasn't just merchandise. It then became, okay, how do we invite Indigenous students from around the state to come to campus during these games? And how do we connect them with enrollment? And how do we talk about the researchers on campus who are doing work with our Native communities or who are Native themselves? Like, we really blew it up into a much larger kind of ethos of our storytelling structure.
I'll pile on and say, for me, that aspect of working with the university was giving me an opportunity to learn more about a market segment and help my team learn more. We thought we knew how to do it until we started really talking to people like Dr. Carla Bird, who's on our campus staff and is the former president of Blackfeet College. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so having access to a campus partner like Carla and to be able to say, what's the best way for us to invite our Indigenous prospective students to campus, and learning that it's about inviting the family, capital F, which is very inclusive and can be very expansive. I come from a family of 3, 4 kids. There are 6 of us. Like, even the idea of all of my brothers coming with me and my parents to visit my college was unfathomable. I didn't actually visit, but this is a very important rite and moment in their families. And so learning, like, and making my old brain learn some new tricks in terms of how to develop messages and conflows and segmentation that's not pandering, but is meaningful and accurate and true. That's exciting to do something like that.
I agree. I would also add, John, it's important to note that most of the proceeds from that retail line go back to the Kiayo powwow that happens on our campus. It's a student-run powwow. It's one of the oldest in the country. It's absolutely incredible to go and experience that. But the money from the retail line goes back to support that work. So it also felt really meaningful in that way.
That's really cool. What was we just coming out of Thanksgiving at the time of recording this. What is the vibe on campus? Because I always get in my feed like this mixed opinions, around Thanksgiving and what it means, and should we be celebrating and shouldn't we be celebrating, and what's the vibe on campus?
I think it's the same as that. It certainly wasn't, this year was not something that came up, in any of our public conversations, but I think it is something that, we always keep. It's an evolving, ongoing conversation that we have on our campus a lot. Even we have oh my gosh, Steph, what's it called? The land acknowledgement. We have a land acknowledgement, that we say when we're at events, but there's even, debate about, is that just another way of trying to make ourselves feel better? So I think it's what I love about the University of Montana is that it's a place that's really open to debate and tackling some of those big, hard topics.
I agree. I feel like for myself and my family, Thanksgiving has become something that is more, gratefulness and not looking into some manufactured history that is partitioning and inaccurate and patently wrong, but looking more into community and support. I think one of the things that I love about my visits to campus, I go up about once a month and I stay for a week. I'm heading up there on Sunday, is the Payne Family Native American Center. And the last time I was in town, there were some ceremonies going on and they're open to everyone. And I go and I participate, and I'm humbled by what I experience, and I'm humbled by what I don't fully understand. But just having access and proximity to these kinds of things reminds me why higher ed is such a great gig. There's never a moment where you don't have some opportunity to learn or experience something new. And for that reason, I gave up my career in advertising agency, and before that, an Atlantic City casino, and before that, a tiny television news station. So I'm glad I landed here.
I love that. So what's next for both of you? So Jenny, I know that you have some next steps. I'm curious to hear, Stephanie, what's next for University of Montana?
Yeah.
Jenny, you go.
2 days ago was my final day at the University of Montana. I'm in my first ever month-long work sabbatical that I've never done before. Not too antsy yet. I'm sure that will happen at some point. But I'm really excited. I'm so grateful for the time I had at the University of Montana. I'm so grateful for the team there and what we were able to accomplish together. But I had a really great opportunity come out of the blue to join Simpson Scarborough and help them build their new advisory services product line. And so I'm really excited to be moving into the consulting world and helping more campuses do the work that we've done, especially thinking about the organizational development and the team development work that is needed to make really big work happen. And something that I'm personally super nerdy about. Stephanie's like, don't send me any more journal articles, which is fair.
I've never said it.
She doesn't ever say that, but that's, how I
She's thought it real
imagine
hard.
she feels. Yeah, she thought it real hard. No, she's always been so supportive. And so I'll be joining them in January. Very excited. Everyone will still see me. I love higher ed. I'm still dedicated to this space, and I'm still in Montana. So very excited to start that.
I feel like Jenny and I have traded spaces. She's walking into a role that's somewhat similar to one that I inhabited with RNL for a lot of years and served me well. I learned a lot. I saw so much and experienced things that have really set me up to, I hope, be successful with my team at Montana. I think I'm drawing on a lot of the things that I learned in working with a wide range of schools. And I feel like there's still work for me to do. And so we're tackling AI in a lot of different ways. We have partners that are helping us do that. But as I'm looking at website performance data, I'm still a little shattered by our organic search numbers still on a downward trend while we're still trying to measure the impact of AI and zero-click search. That weighs heavily on me, and I need to try a lot of things. So I've been investing time in Reddit and understanding the impact of Reddit content and conversations about the university and how and where that affects our website traffic and our engagement with prospective students and their families and current students. So that's a new area of subject matter exploration for me. And I like that I'm still finding new stuff and finding new pathways for my team to explore. It's good.
I love that. And Stephanie, you're in luck. Your timing is great because the episode that we have coming out in 2 weeks is all about Reddit.
Oh, excellent.
And
Thanks.
it's with Ross Simmons, who owns a marketing and a distribution, 2 different companies, marketing and then a distribution company. And we talked all about Reddit and how, what to do once you have a subreddit and, how to act, how not to act, all this stuff. So I was fascinated. I've been fascinated by it too. And Reddit has been within the last week. I just started a subreddit for the podcast and have been trying to, get on there and try to figure out how do you do this? Cause it's a different beast than,
it is.
But it's so important because zero-click search is primarily referencing Reddit. So if you're not on Reddit, you're missing the boat.
I'm eager to see that episode. I have started but not launched a subreddit because we're still in the sniffing around. I've put a few toes in the water to good results so far, but comportment in Reddit, comportment. I don't know that that's the word that Redditors would use, but it's the word that I think of. You just need to know how to behave.
Yeah.
And it's different. It's really different. So, well, great. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, it's been great having both of you. I'd love to know, where can people connect with each of you at?
LinkedIn is great for me. I know Jenny's there. She does a much better job of saying things and responding to things. I'm a little bit more of a lurker, a looky-loo, than I am a poster these days, but that's a great spot for me. How about you, Jenny?
Same. I'm a firstborn daughter with a lot of opinions that I share on LinkedIn. So that's the best
something
place
that
to find
have,
me. Yes.
That's something that we have always shared in common. We're both in charge of things, and it's worked out really well.
I wanted to add too, John, we didn't touch on this, and you feel free to cut this, but having Stephanie join me and stay on at Montana has just been such a gift. I think, we often think of careers as being linear and stepladder, and it's you do this, then that, then that. And I think, for Stephanie, she came on board and she said to me, I'm going to be your lieutenant. I'm going to be here to back you up. And she, very easily, she could have come in and been I've been a CMO, let me tell you how to do this job. And she did not do that. She was still a mentor to me and still a coach, but in a way that was just so meaningful for me at this stage of my career. And I hope one day in my career I can do what she did for me in this moment of my career, because I literally thought I was going to have a stroke in the first 6 months I had this job. And she has been there for the moments when it's been what am I doing? I don't think I can do this. And she's like, you're going to do this. You know, it's like the pep talks, the understanding of the pressures. Very few people, unless they've been in these roles, understand the way that you're trying to communicate up and over and sideways, and you're juggling glass balls and issues management, crisis. Just so much comes at you. And Stephanie was there as one of those people who I just knew I could hand things to. It would be fine. She would show up for me. And it's just been such a gift. And so I just wanted to make sure to add that as part of this podcast, because it's something that I hope other people who are at the same stage of their careers as Stephanie think about, of how powerful it can be to have somebody as a number two who has been in your shoes.
I am eternally grateful for the opportunity, and let me spin it in a way that might be unexpected. Having been in a number one position here and there, I got to tell you, if you can walk it back to a number two, man, that is the sweet spot. That's where you don't have to go to executive leadership cabinet meetings or show up in fancy outfits. You can wear your puffy bird hat to a podcast and then hunker down and do work that gets done and is really meaningful in the kind of like day to day. Jenny moved our ship from going there to going where it needed to go. And that was everything, not having to worry about that and just saying, I know how to get this piece from there to there. And I know how to get this piece from there to there. And I'm going to raise up a team to go there and do the things. That is so much fun. I get paid for this. It's delightful.
That's awesome. Well, it's been so great to hear, about both of your relationship. It's been super great having you, great to see how your partnership has played out into, these really big accomplishments and all this hard stuff, that has come up. But Jenny, enjoy your sabbatical. It's been really great learning from you. Hope you have watched lots of Dancing with the Stars. And Stephanie will be looking forward to seeing what's next for University of Montana.
Well, keep an eye on us. We have more things coming. And also, just to do a little callback, according to Spotify, it's going to take me 46 hours to listen to Count of Monte Cristo. So,
wow.
That's a pretty long road trip. That's a pretty long road trip.
I think that's like a January 1, 2026. We'll start then kind of project. You can check in with me maybe about September and see how far along I am.
That's awesome.
Love it. Well, thanks so much for being here, you guys. Appreciate it.
John, thanks for what you do. We appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for listening. I want to give you two things before you go. Number one, reminder to sign up for the Higher Ed Storytellers Digest. It's my free weekly newsletter for Marcom leaders where we talk about all things content creation and strategy in higher ed. Subscribe at unveiled.tv/newsletter. Number two, follow me on LinkedIn. If you're searching for me, my name is John Azzoni, and it's spelled Johnazoni. All right, I'll catch you on the next episode, and in the meantime, I'll see you in your inbox. Okay, bye.